My name is James Öhlen. I'm the creative director on Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Okay, so can you tell us a bit about the Old Republic and where it's gone from the last Star Wars games in the kind of series? Because it's moved on from Knights of the Old Republic 2. Tell us a bit about that and your decisions you've made.
So, Star Wars: The Old Republic is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game set in the Star Wars universe several thousand years before the movies and 300 years after the Knights of the Old Republic series, which was also developed by BioWare for the Xbox and PC many, many years ago. The game is the reason we decided to go build this game is because BioWare wanted to get into the MMO space. It was very important for us to be in that genre, and we felt that we chose Star Wars because it's such a big IP, and we had so many fans of the Knights of the Old Republic series already there, so it just seemed to be a no-brainer. As well, it seemed like all of our fans, when they were trying to guess what MMO we were making, they kept on guessing Knights of the Old Republic online, so it just seemed to be the right way to go.
So have you taken a lot of draws from other MMOs in this space, like World of Warcraft and things like that?
Well, we've our overall vision for the game was essentially taking BioWare storytelling and adding it to the online space. So we have taken a look at all the different massive multiplayer games out there. Within the design group, I think we've played every single MMO ever built, all the way from the really hardcore ones like EVE to obviously World of Warcraft and Warhammer and City Heroes and EverQuest and EverQuest 2 and everything. We've played them all. We've used, whenever you're going into a genre, it's important that you take a look at the competition and take what's working and then make changes that will differentiate you from everyone else. And we feel we're doing that by adding BioWare storytelling and Star Wars and the changes to combat dynamics that we've made.
Okay, so I just had a go as a Sith Apprentice. And can you talk about a bit about the Sith Apprentice? I noticed there was a lot of dialogue, which is quite different for an MMO to have a lot of dialogue. How much dialogue have you got in there? How much voice acting?
So you played the Sith Inquisitor?
Yeah.
The lightning?
Yeah.
So we have, again, it's I think we have less dialogue per hour than any other BioWare game, and that's just been a necessity because of the cost of that kind of content over the course of hundreds of hours of gameplay times 8 classes, but also because when you're in a multiplayer environment, you want players to be doing other activities in addition to doing the dialogue. So it is less per hour than other BioWare games, but obviously it's still a significant portion of your experience is doing this fully voice-over cinematic dialogue. Now, when you're first starting off in the game, you do have a lot more of it, but that's because we're teaching you about who you are, your main story, and setting up your story. So it becomes there's less conversation per hour later on in the game, but there's still quite a bit because we feel that storytelling like that is going to immerse people more in their world and in their character than any other MMO before.
Okay.
And then did the game take to develop?
How long? Well, we've been working on it since 2006. Like at the beginning of 2006, we were still looking around for what kind of IP we were going to do. I think I wrote up like a dozen different proposals for what MMO. Star Wars was always at the top of the list, but we were at the beginning of 2006. We were working on the technology and shopping around for what we were going to what the setting was going to be. And then about mid 2006. We really were serious about Star Wars and started developing for that. That's when we started doing the story, like the initial story outlines and all that. And even in final dialogue that's actually in the game started getting written at the end of 2006. So that's 5 years.
So you said about the other ideas you had. Can you talk about any of the other ideas that you had? And
it was all different IPs. We had. We looked at doing a Dragon Age MMO, a Mass Effect MMO, Marvel, Star Wars set 100 years in the future, Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion. Those are two separate, because they're actually two separate licenses. One will never ever become a game because the Silmarillion is still owned by Christopher Tolkien, and you know what he thinks about movies and games. He hates them. What else was... Game of Thrones, because a lot of us on the team are a huge fan of that. and a brand new fantasy IP like that. So those were some of the things we threw around.
So are you happy that they've gone for Star Wars, or would you like to have seen go for something else?
No, I'm like I love Star Wars. I'm like one of the biggest Star Wars geeks I know. Like I played with the action figures as a kid, and I ran a pen and paper Star Wars campaign when I was a teenager. And obviously working, I was lead designer on Knights of the Old Republic. In some ways, it would have been cool to do something different, having done Knights of the Old Republic, but also going back to something familiar was really cool as well.
So with the different stories for each class, did you have a different writer for each different class, and how did that work?
Yeah, for the most part, we tried to have a single writer for each class. However, that hasn't worked out perfectly. Some of the classes have multiple writers. The Jedi Knight has multiple writers, and the Smuggler has multiple writers, and the Jedi Consular has multiple writers. So there's been the Sith Inquisitor, the writer for that one was the same all the way to the end. The Sith Warrior, the same thing, same writer all the way to the end. And then Bounty Hunters had multiple writers, 2 writers. Usually it's only 2. And the Imperial Agents had 1 writer all the way to the end. Same with the Trooper, 1 writer.
So was there much collaboration between the writers, or were they very much isolated and they just got on with their own ideas?
Oh no, they all work in, they actually currently work in one big room. So they're all together in cubes. And they have a lead writer who's actually just here, Daniel Erickson, who edits all their work and makes sure whenever they're doing story proposals, they make sure that everyone has a chance to take a look at the story proposals, and they're reviewed by Daniel, myself, and it's they definitely don't work in isolation.
Okay. Some comments about other MMOs like World of Warcraft is that the narrative really takes a back seat. Would you say that that's going to happen with Star Wars at all, or
say that again?
With other MMOs like World of Warcraft, people say that the narrative kind of takes a back seat and isn't really important. It's just a bit of text and you ignore it. How would you say that Star Wars is different to it?
Well, if they say that about Star Wars: The Old Republic, I'm probably out of a job because I failed miserably. I hope that's not the case, because that's kind of our selling point, is that we're providing a narrative to the MMO space which hasn't really been done before. And we're providing this fully cinematic voice story that takes you through the world. So I don't think it's going to take a back seat. There's going to be some players who might speed through some of the less compelling quest content, but that's the case of every BioWare game has allowed you to do that. So for example, I know this personally because I've played every BioWare game that I've worked on about 2,000 times, and so on about the 11th time I just start hitting the space bar and like going through. I don't listen to anything because I'm just testing it to see how other things are working. And some players are, if you're, for example, if you're playing an Imperial class for the 3rd time, say you've played the Sith Warrior, the Sith Inquisitor, and the Imperial Agent, some of the World Quest content you'll have already done 2 times before that. So yeah, you might skip through that.
How much crossover is there between the narrative strands of each different class?
Each class has, if you play a Sith Warrior after having played a Sith Inquisitor, your class story will be completely unique. There's no crossover at all. There's no reused content. However, the world quests, which are kind of the quests that deal with the plot of the planet or the area you're in, you'll be doing those again. Those are shared between within a faction. Between the 2 factions, there's no sharing because we couldn't. We'd have loved to, because it would have been a lot more financially responsible to share quests, but it just didn't make it. There was no way to share a Republic quest with an Imperial quest, because why would Darth Vader do a quest that Luke Skywalker did? It doesn't make sense.
Can you tell us though about the space combat? What's new now? What you can do? What ships you can fly?
So with space combat, it's space combat is basically an extra activity. Star Wars being Star Wars, you need to have space represented in some way. So we knew from the very beginning we were going to give the player's own ship, because that's something that Knights of the Old Republic fans definitely expected. Having the Ebon Hawk in Knights of the Old Republic was one of the more favorite features. So we gave them their own ship. We gave them a galaxy map, which would allow them to view the galaxy in a beautiful 3D view and choose where he wanted to plot a course to use his astrogation to go to a new location in the galaxy. We also wanted him to use the ship as kind of a home base, almost kind of like player housing, for MMO terminology. where you could store all of his companion characters and other stuff as well, and also customize. And then finally, we needed to provide space combat, which is the thing that we just announced and released the video on. So with space combat, we didn't want to, it wasn't going to be a whole other game, because that would be really crazy. It's really an additional activity. You could compare it to the other activities that you can do in an MMO, such as battlegrounds or crafting or other things that essentially are a part of the game and enhance the main gameplay, which is you playing your avatar and leveling up your way through the game and playing the story. So we were inspired by all the space sequences from the Star Wars movies, like the end of Return of the Jedi, or the asteroid chase sequence in Empire Strikes Back, or the other asteroid chase sequence in Attack of the Clones. And those, what we wanted to do was essentially when the player opens up his galaxy map, he's able to astrogate to a hotspot where there's a galactic where there's basically a conflict going on between the Republic and the Empire, or sometimes it's like the Republic versus a neutral faction, the Empire versus a neutral faction, and you get into the action right away. It's a very crafted, 5 to 8 minute long sequence where you're either avoiding asteroids, or you're running away from capital ships, or you're diving into the hot upper atmosphere of a planet and getting involved in a fight. And we also wanted to, if you watch the video, you'll see that we've tried to put some story in there through companion characters commenting on what's going on, which is kind of, we drew inspiration for that from, in Empire Strikes Back, Princess Leia and C-3PO's colorful commentary about what was going on outside. They were a little bit scared that they weren't going to survive that one. That's kind of, or the radio chatter from, the trench runs in Episode 4. So that's pretty well space combat in a nutshell.
Can you just go into a little bit more depth about the companion characters?
So your companion characters, you're going to be, throughout the course of the game, you get introduced to colorful and interesting NPCs, and sometimes you get to pick them up as a companion character. Usually, actually, one of the lessons we learned from earlier Bioware games is people are much more interested in a companion character. If you introduce like an NPC into the world that's really interesting, and you get the player thinking, I wish this guy was my companion character, and then they do become your companion character. So we do that a lot in the game. We're not revealing exactly how many can join your party, but you do get a stable of more than one. How about I say more than one and less than 10? The stable of companion characters, you can only ever have one out at a given time. And each companion character has, a different set of abilities and has strengths and weaknesses. So, one companion might be a better tank, while one might be a better ranged damage dealer. So, if you're, for example, a Sith Inquisitor, and you decide to go we've been talking about advanced classes. So, the Sith Inquisitor, who you played, can split to become more of a Darth Maul close combat DPS guy, or he can become a long-range Palpatine lightning wielder. So if you're a long-range lightning wielder, you might want to go with a companion character that's more of a tank. Who also happens to be the first companion character the Sith Inquisitor gets, which is the Deshad, which we haven't revealed, which is this big alien creature that you free from a tomb deep in the depths of Korriban. And he's this big muscled alien that uses melee weapons. So he's great if you've chosen to go the Palpatine route. Because it kind of makes you feel like a Palpatine, because he's this ancient, evil creature, and you send him, and he gets all the, all the enemies focus on him, while you can use your lightning powers to take them out of the distance. And then, but there's other companion characters that you can take out instead. Like perhaps maybe you're not interested in the Deshad because you met an NPC of a different gender, and you're trying to get a romance with them. So you're always keeping them out instead for story reasons. So that might be a reason. You might choose story reasons over, combat effectiveness to keep out a companion character. It's really the player's choice. Though I guess if you're going into a difficult flashpoint with a group, they're probably going to tell you what companion character you're going to use.
Can you tell us a bit about the leveling, like what the initial level can be, and how quickly?
We do have a level cap. But we haven't revealed what that level cap is yet.
How many hours would you expect before someone reaches that level cap?
I will say hundreds.
Okay.
Less than 500, more than 100. How about that?
Okay. What about the pricing model? How is it going to be priced to play?
We haven't revealed the pricing model yet.